best cure for insomnia ever.
Budgets aren't boring.
All right, everyone, we are now live. You can begin.
Alrighty, well, good morning, everybody. Our favorite time of the year. I'll turn it over to Mr. Pilarchio. Right now, we're probably going to need the whole hour, so we won't waste any time. Mr. Pilarchio, please.
Well, good morning, everyone. We're here for the 2021 draft budget, but before I start, I just wanted to give my thanks to all the divisions and the general managers that did a whole lot of work in order to get this budget package together for County Council, as well as my own finance division team. It's living through COVID is definitely a challenge, but dealing with budgets and COVID, it could be just as big a challenge as well. So that being said, I just want to start off with those notes, and basically a budget, as we all should know, is a planning document, and it guides council's decisions. So on February 17th, 2021, it's my honor to deliver the Corporation of the County of Lambton's draft budget. As far as our agenda is concerned, I'd like to talk a little bit to you about fiscal responsibility, some budget basics, what's the gross versus net budgeting, the 2021 corporate budget overview. I've developed planned out a budget story on key budget decision points, primarily decision 1, which is basically your base budget or your operating capital budget increase. Decision 2, which is basically continuing to invest in our existing infrastructure. Decision point 3, I have is new investments in Bayside Center option to purchase in 2031. As a 5th point, I wanted to talk a little bit to you about COVID impacts in the 2021 budget highlights. As part of every budget document, it's important to look at your reserves and your reserve funds, and especially their linkages to your asset management plan. Where are we with our debt overview and highlights? Some long-term financial planning and future cost pressures that the county will be looking at, and generally our 2021 budget timetable. So that being said, budget focus, gross expenditures less non-property tax revenues equal your property tax levy. And your expenditures as a county are approximately about $238 million. When you look at your non-property tax revenues, when I talk about non-property tax revenues, I'm basically referring to items such as government grants and subsidies, user fees, other income such as investment income. That comes to about $157.6 million in 2021, and it leaves a levy ask, or a property tax levy ask, that we're looking at $82.2 million. You can raise that levy in a couple different ways. One is through assessment growth. So as your city grows and you have more ratepayers, you get more money from assessment growth, and you can also get the levy that's required from a tax rate increase. So really what's important in any budget is what's guiding us. Investing wisely to continue to building our county services while maintaining a solid financial position. It's always something that I've utilized to guide municipal budgeting. And what do I mean by that in strategies? Well, promote affordable and competitive property taxes, reduce our debt levels and costs whenever we can, promote pay-as-you-go financing for items and capital that are regular and recurring. We try to contain costs whenever we can, ensure our reserve funds and reserves are adequate, invest strategically, and we try to manage our assets the best way we can. I wanted you to know that we've maintained a AA stable credit rating in 2020 in spite of COVID. So our financial footing is still strong, even though we've gone through a COVID pandemic, we're still going through a COVID pandemic. We look at it from a financial front as it being a temporary period of time for municipal budgeting. So when we take a look at our 2021 net tax impact budget overview, in 2020, it required $65.2 million in our operating budget across all divisions, all county divisions. $15 million of capital budgeting was required for our tangible capital assets and our non-tangible capital assets. And then by non-tangible capital assets, I really mean what our contributions to reserves and reserve funds are. But in totality, in 2021, we required $80.2 million in order to operate our county services. In 2021, what does that look like? In 2021, it's $67.1 million or $1.9 million more. For our capital budget, it's $15.2 million as part of our draft budget. So we're looking at an $82.3 million property tax levy for 2021. So the total dollar increase is $2.1 million. What's required from levy is 2.57%. But because we get that assessment growth of 0.82%, which is relatively, just briefly on this, is fairly high for the period that we're going through. We got some positive news there, so 0.82%, and the rate increase that's required to fund this budget is 1.75%, which I just want to point out is the lowest draft levy increase that we've submitted to the county council in the last 7 years. The 1% rate increase is equal to, every 1% is equal to $800,200 worth of levy. And all figures on this chart, just to be clear, are subject to rounding. When we look at our operating budget, as I mentioned, is about approximately $67.1 million, $1.8 million ask across all city county divisions. And I just want to note that it includes $2.6 million worth of Safe Restart carryover in 2020 and $722,000 Safe Restart Phase 2 of provincial funding. All that funding is included in the non-tax portion revenue of the slide. Think to remember, a Safe Restart funding can only be applied to eligible operating costs incurred by a municipality. When you take a look at our capital budget, we are looking at approximately $15.2 million from levy, or only $219,000 more than we raised last year. You've seen the benefits of your contributions to the amortization reserve that you did last year in order to mitigate tax rate growth. It's important, like I said before, $239.8 million in total expenditures for operating capital, $157.6 million of revenue that doesn't come from property tax sources, which requires an $82.2 million increase, or roughly, like I mentioned before, the 2.57% levy increase, offset by assessment growth of 0.82% to get you to the 1.75% increase. That's 0.82% equates to approximately $657,000 worth of new revenue to mitigate some of the tax rate pressures. Another thing I want to point out as far as the corporate budget, this budget includes a $500,000 startup contribution for a potential Bayside acquisition reserve. So decision point one, when you take a look at the 1.75%, our base budget is coming in at 1.1%. By base, I mean basically both your operating and capital budget. And what's part of our budget story? Well, across the county, we've really tightened the amount of position gapping that's included in this budget, and we've reduced it wherever we can across several divisional budgets. So it's a tight budget on the personnel side. We've created service efficiencies and alternate service delivery where we've reduced in public programming, areas such as cultural services. Travel and training has been significantly reduced due to remote work. We looked at basically implementing some of capital initiatives such as LED lighting initiatives, which you're seeing some of the cost savings in energy-related areas. As far as the base budget, like I mentioned, the capital budget, we continue to use a project scoring guide, and we've cut our capital budget and deferred areas where the marks on our capital budget didn't go as high as we thought, so we definitely looked at our capital. We're utilizing reserve funds strategically to mitigate our phase-in tax rate increase. So this tax rate increases. Like I mentioned before, amortization reserves. County Council continued with the plan last year and raised money for amortization reserves. What that meant was that basically you're receiving the benefit this year because you require less from levy in capital because of that contribution. We're also utilizing our stabilization reserves as best as we can, where we basically have sufficient funds in this year's budget in order to mitigate some tax rate growth. Decision point 2. This is a decision that we looked at last year, and we continue to basically encourage you to invest in your existing assets. We have a planned increase to our amortization reserve, including this year's budget. It's $686,000 or 0.9%, and it represents the 10th year of an asset management plan that the County Council endorsed in 2012 that focuses on reducing the county's infrastructure deficit by ensuring strategic investments through our amortization reserve contributions. A little bit about on the asset management plan. I just want to remind Council that the asset management plan was a great starting point approximately 10 years ago, but one of the issues with our asset management plan was that until such time as the full $5.5 million is raised, the cumulative unfunded deficit will continue to increase. So we know we have a deficit in our asset management plan, and that was well known a while ago. Second issue is a lot of the estimates that were included in our capital asset management plan was based on historical costs. So, it's not generating all the funds required to replace assets at current prices. So, just a reminder that we still have a significant infrastructure backlog to address, and during 2021 through to 2024, we hope to have done more work this year on our asset management plan because of COVID, there's a lot of municipalities across Ontario that are relooking at their asset management plan in future period. But we'll be committed to updating the plan to ensure municipal assets are managed in the most cost-effective and efficient management possible. So as I mentioned, this is the 10th year. This year's budget includes a $686,000 increase over last year, which represents a 0.9% increase on the levy. We will report back to you on the asset management plan, and basically we want to look at a long-term capital planning and financing requirements, not only for our roads, our infrastructure and development services division, but for every division in the county. Targeted reserve fund levels per asset category are an important area that we need to focus on. Net replacement value per asset category. And we need to dedicate the right resources for effective asset management planning as well. We'll build inflation estimates into our long-term care plan. Decision point 3, investment in new assets. This represents 0.6% of the increase this year in this year's levy, and that's basically trying to ensure prudent financial planning, being consistent with our county strategic plan that addresses sustainability and safeguards future municipal infrastructure by starting a contribution of $500,000 to potentially purchase Bayside by the year 2031. If you basically start with a plan in 2021, a 10-year savings plan, and you look at these contribution levels, you'd arrive at approximately $14 million by 2031, and the option to purchase is $23.5 million. So a little over half the asset value that County Council looked at in June 2020 when they made their decision on Bayside property. As far as COVID budget impacts, this is a very difficult estimate to come in at across not only the county, but across all areas, all municipalities. But there's cost pressures and revenue losses within the county in our public health services, where you have contact tracing, screening, long-term care has screening, vaccinations. We've dealt with pandemic pay, social services, shelters, homelessness, childcare, our court services. We're seeing delays in provincial offenses revenue. That all requires corporate support. From technology, payroll, and finance facilities. So inside our corporate cost estimates, we have approximately $12.5 million. But on the positive front, we continue to utilize a cost containment culture across all county divisions. Whenever we can save some money, we will. But we've been fortunate enough to get some funding from our provincial funding from the province of Ontario from areas such as Safe Restart, the Ministry of Long-Term Care, Ministry of Health, Municipal Affairs and Housing, as well as the Ministry of Education. And we're basically looking at approximately $12.5 million to offset those cost pressures. And in the end, the impact on the levy is 0%. Now we on this we continue to monitor cost pressures and the funding, but the assumption that we've made in this year's budget is that there's zero impact on the levy. Key highlights: approximately $12.5 million in public health, long-term care, social services, and corporate support. Cost containment in the spring of 2020. As a county, we acted early in order to contain costs. It allowed Safe Restart funding to be utilized as a carryover in 2021. So we're utilizing some of our Safe Restart funding in 2021. The carryovers for program-specific grants as well. A reminder, as far as COVID's concerned, I don't think it's a big surprise that we know that there's a significant provincial and federal budget deficit, and the way we continue to monitor the provincial budgets and the federal budgets, and any additional funding in 2021, my best guess to you is that it would likely come with conditions and/or restrictions. So this slide, reserves and reserve funds. Reserves and reserve funds are critical, and why? Why are they critical? To pay bills, liquidity, to cover our liabilities and emergencies, for effective asset management. When you have money in your reserve funds, you could basically not utilize debt in order to fund some of your capital, to make investments. And what happens without reserves and reserve funds? Again, a reminder, costs would increase from debt servicing, larger contingency budgets. Our AA stable credit rating could potentially be in jeopardy. When your credit rating goes down, it means a higher cost of borrowing normally, reduction in capital works and investments without adequate reserve funds. And there's a loss of flexibility to take advantage of our opportunities. No more stimulus. We could have liquidity problems, and in some cases, if you don't have adequate reserve funds, it could lead to a second tax levy increase, which is something no one wants. As far as our funding, in the balance at January 1st, 2020 was approximately $48.4 million. By December 31st, our balance grew to 60.8, and one of the reasons why it grew is basically we deferred a lot of our capital works. We got some significant funding from basically Safe Restart, and it was put into our reserves. We've been looking at contributions of $14.4 million in 2021, but there's draws in 2021 as well as prior year commitments. That brings your balance back to about $48.5 million. The thing that I want to highlight is that our reserves and reserve funds remain relatively stable. One thing as far as the county reserve funds are, there are money in the reserve funds, but in order to be very open and transparent, we're well below the median of other municipalities in Ontario. So we are growing them, which is a good thing, but we'd like to grow them at a more sufficient level in order when you're dealing with asset management planning. On debt, our debt servicing charges on the levy are $3 million this year, which is a reduction from what our net charges were last year. The debt levy issued and authorized is $19.8 million. And again, I want to stress that one of the benefits from the county from a financial perspective is our debt levels are low, and that's a good thing. Our maximum debt charges, based on the limits that the province has put on us, is that our debt charges could be as high as $19.6 million, and our potential debt limit could be in excess of $90 million, depending on how you structure that debt, whether it be 5-year debt or 10-year debt. The bottom line is that we're well below our thresholds. It's an important point to know when you're dealing with budgeting. And interest rates are low right now. So if there was an opportunity that the county council wanted to look at a major project of some sort, it's an opportune time to borrow. Projects funded by debt continue to be bridges and culverts, road projects, information technology projects, building improvement projects at forest locations. Those are some of the budget categories that are being funded by debt this year. Included in the year 2021 budget, there's information reports that provide good information for you. The 6 reports are the CEO's Nutrition Management Report, Social Services, Child Care, Long-Term Care, we have Lambton Meadowview Villa, as well as Dementia House, Consultant Site Prep. There's the Bayside Center Option to Purchase Report, and there's the Funding Amortization Expenses Report. These are very good reports to look at as you deliberate your 2021 budget. I just wanted to hold on. So our budget highlights. Our assessment growth is up despite the COVID pandemic at the rate of 0.82%. 1.75% is the lowest county levy increase presented to council in the last 7 years. Reserve fund levels are stable as we continue our commitment to reducing the county's infrastructure deficit, and we utilize stabilization reserves. The overall debt load for the county is low. 0.6% of our county levy budget increase is due to planning for the acquisition of the Bayside Center in 2021, and our capital budget continues to be strong with less funding requirement for levy. As we look at the future, I mentioned one of the most important things is updating our corporate asset management plan, as well as looking at the provincial downloading impacts in areas such as public health services, social services, and long-term care. Those are areas that we all need to focus on as we move forward financially. I also want to highlight our council grants program as far as our major capital grants. On October 7th, 2020, I prepared a report with respect basically the COVID pandemic and trying to get into that cost containment culture, and County Council approved a moratorium on new capital grant requests for the 2021 budget. It's just a reminder. And in this year's budget, as far as major capital grants, we have Lambton College, which is 6 of the 6 installments. $833,000 is being funded by levy. We also have the 4th of a 10-year capital grant for Strathroy Middlesex General Hospital, which equates to about $938,000 worth of major capital grants in this year's budget that's levy funded. In 2022, because the Lambton College grant drops off, it goes down to 0. Strathroy continues at 105. But I want to remind County Council about their October 2nd, 2019 council resolution where they committed to funding the research park approximately $610,000 as far as core funding to that program. So the total tax levy requirement in 2022 is approximately $725,000, which leaves you with the ability, and there's a capacity in your tax levy in 2022 of $213,000, which County Council can do with whatever they like to do. There's options on the table for it. As far as our budget timetable, this process started as early as April. Our GMs did a tremendous amount of review in the month of January. We updated our budget overviews for you by the 31st. You received your capital grant presentations on the 3rd of February. We're releasing the budget today on February 17th. Council reviews are scheduled for March 3rd and March 11th if necessary. And with that being said, as always, any additional information or answers to questions on the budget, please feel free to contact me at any time. And as the warden mentioned, as far as budget distribution and packages, there's several people that are going to assist today, try to get you those budget packages as quick as possible throughout the day, noting that this is a very different, let's say, budget release with respect to going through COVID and Zoom and so forth. So we're all trying to adapt, but we'll get that information to you hopefully by the end of the day. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Palarchio. Are there any questions? don't see it. I only can see 4 people right now. So,
Stop sharing. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I got it. There you
oh,
go.
there we go. Now I can see it. Who's first? Councillor Loosely.
Thank you, Warden Merritt. And I want to thank the treasurer for that report. It was very interesting. I just want to bring to your attention about there's a lot of municipalities with a lot of growth going on right now with a number of planned subdivisions. And I just wondered if the treasurer's really taken that into account, or maybe a 5-year plan, and looking at the increased assessment to the county over the next 5 years, because I think we're really blessed, not only in petroleum, but with a number of other municipalities with growth. And I just wonder if that 0.82% is enough. Thank you, Warden Marriott.
Mr. Polarco, would you like to respond to that?
Well, that's a figure that we get from our assessment rolls, and it's consistent. It's an adopted figure. It's not like there's an estimate to it. And as we get more building and growth, we hope to see more assessment growth in future years. But there's a whole bunch of the challenges that go with assessment growth, especially during the COVID pandemic. We continue to work with our advisory group, municipal tax advisory group, on looking at assessment and the future year-related impacts.
First I had Councillor Stark, and then I believe Councillor Bean, and then Councillor Napper. Go ahead, Councillor Stark.
Yes, Mr. Polarco, what does 1% equal in terms of dollar value?
We have, through you, the warden, through to Councillor Stark, very good question. 1% on the levies, $800,000. I believe it's on slide 3 or 4 of the presentation. It's always a good number to keep in mind.
Councillor Bean?
Thank you, Warden Marriott. I'm just wondering, with that announcement we had from the government this morning, is that going to affect the budget at all? Is that going to be taken into account, or is that just an extra?
Good question. I was wondering the same. I believe it's going to be in and out.
Right. So right now I have to review the information that was just released, like everything as we go through COVID and funding announcements. We'll review that, but right now I can't commit whether any of that money is committed to this year's budget or not.
And just for the PM committee's knowledge, Bob Bailey came on. He wasn't able to be on this time slot. He called yesterday to say that the province had passed the application. I forget what the name of it is, but the to finance people to stay in their homes. I believe Ms. Colasani and Andrew Taylor put this together in the form of $2.8 million, and it's to for EMS to be called. Maybe I should turn it over to somebody else can explain it better. I just know the basics. There's Mr. Taylor. Thank you.
Yes, through you, Warden, it's exciting news. Communities basically that have existing community paramedic programs were invited to express interest. So what this funding will enable us to do is work in partnership with the LIN, the local Ontario Health Team, and it's a purpose of this program is to basically help keep individuals who are on the waiting list for long-term care in their homes and stabilized in their homes. So that's how this funding is going to be utilized. We don't have any formal details. We just have the MPP's announcement today, so we're quite excited to receive the formal details. And this program is basically going to enable us to expand on our community paramedicine work throughout the county.
Thank you for that, Mr. Taylor. So yeah, next question, Councillor Napper, please.
My question's to Larry. impact, and I could be wrong on this, the supplementary was slow coming through this year because of COVID, and is that going to have an impact where it, on the new growth, like I think it's called supplementary, I'm going from memory here. Is that going to have any impact? Because it should be larger next year. I know we had a fair amount of growth here, and it really didn't reflect, and they said that it would be made up next year.
Through the ward and through to Councilor Napper, very good question. We monitor supplementary tax revenue in the budget. This year there was a bit of a delay in receiving some of the funding, so we'll monitor it in 2021. We're hopeful that the revenue will come forward. The offset is basically there are other properties that are looking to basically reassess their values without going into too many details on that end part of it. So there's a balancing act as far as supplementary, the additional funding side through supplementary tax revenues. But there's also properties that have assessment appeals that we're very aware of as well.
Any other questions? Councillor Arnold.
Thank you very much, Warden Marriott. I guess my question goes back to pre-COVID days. This provincial government had a number of initiatives that they were going to do to drop back on percentage fundings and a number of their programs that they were currently funding. I'm just wondering, has that impact ever been felt through the county? Was it ever enacted, or with the COVID, was it lost in the shuffle? And if it has already been put through the budget, and I can't remember, what type of an impact will that have going forward in the next few years? Because I think on a long-term basis, they were looking at dropping 10 to 15% out of a number of their core funding pieces that we were going to have to pick up.
Through the ward to Councillor Arnold, again, great question. It's part of the later part of the presentation on future budget pressures. Actually, from a county perspective, we're looking at 2022 as probably a harder year than 2021. Areas such as public health, for example, they deferred the reduction in the funding formula from 75-25% split to a 70-30% split, which would mean more of an impact on county funding because of the COVID pandemic. So it's something that we closely look at, and we haven't felt the brunt of it in 2021, but we're anticipating some potential challenges in 2022 on the provincial funding side.
Councillor Hand, please.
Could I ask a question to Mr. Pacheco regarding in the capital, when you spoke about the 213,000, whatever that number was, left on the table? So I mean, I'm sure I'll understand more when I see the binder, but is that like money that could still be committed to one of the capital requests that are coming in?
I believe you're referring to page 7 of the presentation, which states that the capital budget is increasing by 219,000. And if that's the case, is we've seen, our capital budget's is at $36.4 million. We've utilized revenues from government grant sources such as OSIF financing, some draws from our reserves and reserve funds, as well as our debt, where the tax levy contribution is approximately $15.2 million this year, and in comparison to last year was $15 million, or only a couple $100,000 more, which is part of the decision point 1, which is the 1.1% increase in the levy. So capital is contributing to the increase in the levy, but by a very small portion. If that was the question that you were asking on the 2.
It was the page where you showed the commitment to Lambton College, for example.
Oh, sorry. So on the capital grants piece,
yes,
because your capital grants is at $1 million this year, approximately, in 2021. And if I just go to that slide, next year, the commitments with the research park is $725,000. So in 2021, it was 938, and in 2022, our commitment's 725. So that leaves tax capacity of $213,000. And that $213,000, like I mentioned, county council has options with that. They could, ranging from tax rate mitigation to trying to fund your basically your infrastructure gaps on amortization, or increase putting your capital grants the same levels that they were last year. So there is funding available with that program.
Thank you. That's what I was getting at. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to hear you're really treating this as a 2-year budget, because the roller coaster ride is not going to end this year economically. But I do want to come back to what Mayor Hand raised about that money. Have you heard anything further on what the province promised about the ability to create that special small business class? And if so, if we decided to create it, can we support that, at least at the beginning, from that additional money that's there?
Good question. We're right after budget's delivered and approved. But we're still waiting for the regulations. My understanding on the small business property class, and but basically it is it really becomes the fairness and the equity about how you share the tax burden. Because if you basically make a reduction to the small business property class, you need to basically raise that funding somewhere else. The $213,000, however, is a potential component of looking at a reduction in levy that could assist, and perhaps we could be creative in with the small business property class.
Yeah, I just leave this thought with you because you're the expert. Instead of changing the tax classes, even though we may get that power, would it be easier if we wanted to help small business, just to direct those funds to whatever capacity we have to the system that way, instead of moving all the tax classes around? As you indicate, you move one, someone else suffers.
For sure. I mean, basically, with programs like that, again, just speak off the cuff, is look at the criteria, the eligibility criteria, and those all come into play as to how you distribute, and it's at least it's a start of funding.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Weaver.
Yes, thank you, Warden Marriott, through to Mr. Palercio. I think there's been a great budget. I think the staff, did an excellent job of bringing in a very reasonable approach to this budget. One of the things, and Deputy Warden Hand mentioned it about this money being left on the table. I know back years ago when the long-term grants were put in place, it was the intention that these had an ending term to them, and they were going to be brought down to that it didn't continue anymore. And I know we've continued it with the college, and I know there's talk of it continuing again. And I just want to remind, and I know that you have brought that in the budget, about our infrastructure that is county, with our long-term care homes, the infrastructure that's required for us to maintain our services and facilities that we have within the county, owned and operated by the county. So I hope that council takes that into consideration when they debate this further. I think we have to look after our facilities and make sure that we have the ability to continue looking after our facilities. One of the things that's going to impact us coming down the road, and it's with the taxation, when we set the tax rates, is MPACT is going to do a readjustment, and we all know what the property values have changed in the last couple of years, especially this year with COVID. So when that MPACT reassessment comes around, it's going to be how we set the tax rates and where that goes, it's going to be challenging. But anyway, I thank the finance department and yourself and all the department heads for a good budget for 2021. And we need to look into the future because we know it's going to be tougher down the road. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I think Mr. Palarkio mentioned it, but the real challenge could be a year from now when the feds in the province both tighten their belts and this the millions that we got for COVID. I don't know what we would have done without that. So a year from now, I'm almost sure we won't have any of that left. So my question, I guess I was wondering on long-term care, I know that Meadowview especially is coming up, and I forgot the time frame there when, does anybody, can anybody remind me, is it 5 years or is it less that we have to do something there? And I know that the estimate there was 40 million at one time, but that'll be going up now with the way things have went. Mr. Palarco, do you have an idea when that time, or do we need Mr. Taylor?
I'm not sure if Ms. Joris is on.
Oh, yeah.
I think there she is, but
Yes, there's not a specific timeline. It's just as things are aging and the work we need to do and the service we need to provide. But the estimate for what we would need to spend in the next 5 years to maintain services is in the report. I think it was 9 million.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Rumbouts.
Just in follow up to that question, does that include increases to our service level? Because our population is aging. We know that baby boomers are all getting to the point where they're going to need more care. And are we ready for that?
Yeah, that does not, through you, Warden, to Councillor Rombos, that does not include any increases in service. That's to maintain what we have. And the 40 million is based on a similar size long-term care home that would replace what we have now. And I think we would need to look at increasing the numbers if we were going to do a significant rebuild for economies of scale sake and for meeting the needs of the people.
Okay, thank you for that. Ms. Joris, any other questions? Not seeing any. PM committee starts in 7 minutes. So yeah, as we said, everybody should have their binders by the end of the day, and we'll be all much more familiar with the numbers come March. So thanks for everybody's involvement.